All right, it is 7 o'clock on Wednesday, February 21st, and I thank you all for being here or tuning in to our February 21st meeting of the Town of Plymouth's Advisory and Finance Committee in the Great Hall of the Town Hall of Plymouth. We'll go right to the call of order to see who in our committee is here, and I'm going to start with Ms. Butler.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Cabana.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn.
Here.
Mr. Green.
Here.
Mr. Howard. Mr. Lally.
Here.
Mr. Lawler.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Pizarro.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Richards.
Here.
Ms. Tompkins.
Here.
Mr. Wright.
Here.
Mr. Young. Okay, I think he was going to be here a little later. Ms. Zaro Abraham.
She's here, I just stepped out.
Okay, and Mr. Zuparoli.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you so much. I see Mr. Howard. I'm going to come back to you. Are you
Thank
here?
you. I am here.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format with some participants here physically and others attending virtually, as you can see behind us. This meeting will be airing on Comcast 9, Verizon 47, or on PAC TV's YouTube channel, which can be viewed at pactv.org/stream. The ground rules here are any speaker giving public comment is allotted up to 5 minutes in which to speak. Public comment can be made at the beginning or at the end of the meeting or at a point in time when there's a subject that you would like to make a comment on. Anyone who wants to attend the meeting can do it virtually, including members of the public who wish to give public comment can use one of the following methods. You can download the Zoom app. You can join through the website. You could join by telephone where we'll have voice only. You will not be able to see you. If you do come in through Zoom or the website, it's meeting code 995-2986-0638, and our meeting passcode is 100131. And if you decide to call in, it is phone number 929-205-6099. Also meeting code 995-2986 and 0638, and our meeting passcode is 100131. Any questions so far? Is there any public comment before we start? Okay, hearing none. So, agenda items tonight. This meeting is our traditional budget hearing meeting. If you are following along with our program, you'll see that we will be devoting our entire schedule tonight to annual town meeting articles 7A through 7F. And we're going to call up each committee chair to basically give their presentation on their budget. We'll vote on those budgets after each, just after the discussion, and then we'll just work our way down the subcommittees. So without further ado, we will start with Subcommittee A, Administration, Inspectional Services. Chair Gail Butler, committee members Christine Richards, Robert Zuparoli, and Lou Cabana. Would you like to take the dais?
Okay.
And make sure you put the voice on.
No, let's face that way. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Good evening. They've got me faced this way, and you're all there. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's back. Thank you. Okay, we will start with town manager. So the budget For the town manager, proposed for 2025 is going to be $1,437,919. The town manager provides the, wait a minute. Town manager, Derek Brindisi, provides the professionally day-to-day management of town government, as well as carrying out the policies and directives set by the Select Board. The town manager met with the subcommittee. Budget observations, the requested town manager's budget shows an overall increase of 6.6% from the 2024 budget. Initiatives and opportunities. In addition to the contractual increase of staff, the main drivers of the variance are FTE for general town council, who is a full-time benefited employee for $140,000. This will be a contract position. FTE for communications coordinator, a new initiative for $90,000. FTE for special assistant to the town manager, new initiative, $97,500. One of the members of the subcommittee was uncomfortable with two new initiatives hires. Mr. Nuzzi agreed to hiring the communication coordinator. Comments and other, the proposed F25 budget for other expenses has a decrease of $150,465. The main drivers for the variance are transfer of $140,000 from legal services to personnel services for general counsel. Distinguished visitors contribution increase from $5,000, which will now be $10,000, in this town share and non-union. Transfer of $20,000 for climate action program expenses to DMEA. Recommendations: the subcommittee recommends approval of the budget for $1,437,919. Sorry. Do I ask for questions or just go on? No, I'm reading from this. This one was different. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay. Next, we have Human Services. No, sorry. I can't even see that so far away. Human Services Department oversees all human resources of the town. This includes hiring, benefits, in-service medical evaluations, and managing health care and benefit consultants. The department consists of 2 full-time personnel. Michelle Brady is Commissioner of Health and Human Services. The proposed FY 2025 budget is $594,712, represents a $32,419 or 5.8% increase over the prior year. The preponderance of the increase relates to increases in salaries. The subcommittee recommends approval of the budget of $594,712. Any questions? Town clerk. Do I have to go up? Do I go up again? Yep, that's town clerk. Okay. Town clerk. The town clerk's office has 5 full-time personnel who perform services related to the administration and maintenance of all public records. These records include town meeting warrants and minutes, vital records, meeting postings and minutes, vote certification, town census, as well as dog registration and enforcement. Elections and town meeting expenses are being shown separately for purposes of visibility. Kelly McElrath is the town clerk. Budget observations. The total recommended fiscal year 2025 proposed budget for the town clerk office is $660,906, which is an increase of $37,825 or 6% from fiscal year 2024. This increase represents a level service budget. Wages. The proposed fiscal year 2025 budget includes an increase in wages of $18,066. This proposed increase is the net result of the following: step increase for union employees for 52.2 weeks in fiscal year 25. Department head increase, additional longevity pay for employees. Expenses. The proposed fiscal year 2025 budget includes an increase in expenses of $21,659. This proposed increase is the net result of the following: replacement of an 8-year-old postage machine with a 60-month lease. Increase in technical services to provide for codification maintenance. Increase due to the cost of postage. Recommendations, the subcommittee recommends a budget amount of $660,906. Any questions? Elections and town meeting. The department has people assigned when needed and covers the expenses pertaining to all town elections and town meetings. Budget observations. The total budget request shows an increase of $109,280 or 26.9%. The inclusion of 2 iPads for each voting site has made a huge difference in efficiency. The preponderance of the spending increase is due to the extra elections of FY25. Recommendations. The subcommittee recommends the approval of the election and town meeting budget, $486,898. Any questions? Member benefits. The member benefit budget fund proclaims programs that provide benefits and coverage for 2 town employees. Programs include employment coverage for workers' compensation, disability insurance, life insurance, and health care coverage for retirees. Other programs include a deferred compensation match, a wellness program, and benefits for in-service injury and illness. Budget observations. The FY25 budget shows a decrease of 5.3%. The FY 2024 budget had increased 8.4%. The subcommittee recommends the member benefit be approved as submitted, $8,826,725. I forgot to do that, sorry. Town insurance. I don't think anyone can read it anyhow. Town insurance. The budget covers the town's property and liability insurance costs. Observations, total budget request shows an increase of 15% or $316,345. The value of town-owned property has increased, plus the increased costs in employee liability, vehicles, equipment, and claim history. Initiatives and opportunities, the town takes advantage of 3% discount by paying the insurance premium in early July. The town also takes advantage of the power of the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association, MIIA, which many municipalities in Massachusetts utilize to negotiate for better pricing. Plymouth also receives other discounts via training sessions they participate in periodically. The subcommittee recommends the town insurance budget be approved for $2,422,869. Any questions? All right. Are you moving it up? You're moving it up. Building and zoning. The building department is responsible for ensuring that buildings are constructed and repaired safely. The department issues zoning, building, electrical, gas, and plumbing permits that allow the construction, reconstruction, repair, alteration, or demolition of buildings and structures, as well as the installation of equipment. The department annually inspects restaurants, lodges, and other places of assembly. The department includes 13 FTE employees and is headed by Nick Mayo, Director of Inspectional Services. The proposed budget represents a 2.9% increase over fiscal year 24. The subcommittee recommends approval of the building and zoning budget at $1,109,287. Any questions? Okay.
Recognizing Mr. Dunn.
Motion to recommend approval of Subcommittee A.
Okay, do we have a second?
Seconded.
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Mr. Green. Any discussion on Article 7A? Hearing and seeing none, we will take a vote. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on your budget presentation?
I vote absolutely yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally,
Yes.
Mr. Lawler,
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro,
Yes.
Ms. Richards,
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Ms. Young, Mr. Young, are you here yet? I don't see him yet. Okay. Ms. Zaro Abraham,
Yes.
and Mr. Zuparoli.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends to town meeting approval of Article 7A by a vote of 13 for, 0 against, and 0 abstain. Up, we have a question from Mr. Howard. The floor is yours.
Just a point of order. Mr. Chairman, is it possible for me to present the subcommittee's presentation rather than the report?
I'm not sure what is different.
Well, the presentation is a shorter version of the report. I mean, we had, Subcommittee E had a number of divisions that we addressed, and it's just a lengthy report.
Okay. Sure.
If it's necessary to present the report, I will do so, but I would ask to do so in an abbreviated.
I will agree with
Format,
that,
if
and
that's
if we have
acceptable.
questions, we will make it.
I was just going to respond to Mr. Howard that
okay.
some subcommittees submitted their report as their presentation, and others did a formal presentation. So it just depends on how it was submitted.
Does that-
Both were submitted, Jeanette. For Subcommittee E, I submitted both the report and the presentation.
And when we get to Subcommittee E, your presentation is already loaded.
Thank you.
All right. So up next, excuse me, is Subcommittee B, Department of Finance, Chair Christine Richards, committee members Daniel Green, and myself. Ms. Richards, the presentation is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Subcommittee B is rather extensive, so I will try and fly through it as quickly as possible. We're going to start off with Finance and Accounting Division. Finance and Accounting Department is responsible for maintaining the town's financial records and budget analysis. The town's internal auditor reports to the division administratively. This budget of $1,044,234 is a 11.6% increase from the FY24 budget. Wage increases due to collective bargaining agreements include the following: step increases for 6 out of 8 staff members. In addition, a new initiative to increase the part-time staff member with benefits to a full-time position, additional staff members qualifying for earned and LTIA buybacks, added cell phone reimbursement for the department head. Additional expenses include reporting services such as crystal reports, meetings, training, and relative travel and mileage reimbursement. Memberships, grant writing software. The subcommittee recommends approval of the Select Board's budget of $1,044,234 by a vote of 3-0 unanimously. Are there any questions?
Yes. One here.
Excuse me, Mr. Young, the floor is yours.
Mr. Wright.
Mr. Wright.
That's right. On the step increases, what was the percentage increase that the 6 of the 8 got?
Those are step increases. It moves to a different step. They're not, I don't think they're a fixed percentage.
They're not fixed?
No.
What are they then? They're just a step up?
It's step and, yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Barrett, would you like to clarify for us, please? Lynn Barrett, Finance Director, Town of Plymouth.
It depends what group bargaining unit the employee is in, but it's approximately a 3% step.
Okay. Thank you.
Follow-up question, Mr. Wright?
No.
Okay, Ms. Richards, proceed.
Our next one is procurement. The procurement department is responsible for organizational purchasing services for the town. Organizational purchasing is substantially different from consumer purchasing. Within the constraints of legal and statutory regulations, organizational purchasing has the objective of ensuring effective operations, strategic planning, and competitiveness. The core principles of centralized purchasing are economies of scale, standardization of products, consolidations of supplies, purchasing policies, financial controls, and common information. Budget observations. The total budget reflects a decrease of 1.6% or negative $6,917. The total budget is $436,300. This is due to a decrease in departmental requests. Courier services line item remained even. Data plans for various cell phones were required to be upgraded, increasing the cell phone budget by 7.1% or $3,000. Printing costs have increased due to inflation and the absorption of printing business cards for the police department. Salaries have only increased by less than 1% due to a decrease in longevity. The total budget for the procurement department decreased by negative 1.6%. The subcommittee recommended by a 3-0 vote approval of the select board's budget of $436,300. Are there any questions? Next one is assessing. The assessing department works with the 5-member appointed Board of Assessors and is responsible for valuing all real and personal property. Joel, take care of that for me. It is responsible for valuing all real and personal property. It is also responsible for annually submitting a tax rate recapitulation summary recap sheet for approval by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue and recertify the value of the town by doing field and data reviews of the community every 5 years in an attempt to maintain equitable values. Additionally, the department is responsible for motor vehicle excise bills. The total recommended FY25 budget for the assessing office is $754,613, which is a decrease of $5,607, or minus 0.7% from the FY24 amount of $760,220. Overtime was increased by $1,000. There were several vacancies in the prior years where we were able to absorb the difference. Meeting and education increased by $3,000 due to new employees who need to be educated in the assessing laws. $25,000 was transferred from the revaluation pilgrim appraisal line item to appraisals. This is to assist with the commercial appellate tax board cases. There is no longer a need for an appraisal on pilgrim due to the pilot agreement. Salary and wages. The proposed FY25 budget changes were based on the following. The step increase. Now 5 employees are entitled to the education incentive versus 4 from FY24. Longevity has decreased by $400 due to an employee leaving the office. Vacation earned buyback has decreased by $1,077 due to an employee leaving the office. The subcommittee recommends by a 3-0 vote approval of the select board's budget of $754,613. Are there any questions? Okay, treasurer and collector. The treasurer and collector department is responsible for collecting property taxes, vehicle excise, beach and dump sticker fees, most other taxes and fees the town collects. In addition, the department is responsible for the treasury functions of the town, including cash management, debt issuance, and investing town funds. The total budget reflects an increase of 5.4% or $48,937. The total budget is $947,028. The increase reflects contractual salary obligations and an increase in seasonal employees. additional step increases due to new staff. In addition, staff will be provided with an additional financial management seminar provided by Suffolk University. Invoice Cloud anticipated chargeback fees are included in the budget. The subcommittee recommends by a 3-0 vote approval of the Select Board's budget of $947,028. Any questions? Okay, IT, Information Technologies. The Information Technologies budget is $3,361,000. The Information Technologies Department currently has a staff of 7.5 staff members. A new initiative within the budget requests an additional 0.5 staff members. The new initiative staff includes a cybersecurity analyst to support the IT department and restore the GIS coordinator to a full-time position. IT supports more than 650 clients located over 41 town locations, including school buildings, fire, and police departments. The goals of the IT department are to maintain a municipal area network connecting all town buildings, train town personnel in the use of new computer technologies, support and maintain the town's municipal area network, provide a stable infrastructure on which to build, and implement technologies allowing other departments to more efficiently accomplish their goals. The budget observations. The total recommended FY25 proposed budget for IT, again, is $3,361,000, which is an increase of $490,904, or 23% from FY24. The FY25 budget includes an increase in wages of $82,204, or 10.9%. This proposed increase is the net result of contractual changes, and it also includes an increase in expenses of $436,006, or 26.1%. This proposed increase is the net result of contractual increases and restoral of services cut in FY24. Increased cybersecurity risks affecting all public and private entities requires heightened security software and surveillance. This and other improvements in software and hardware warrant the budget increase. The subcommittee, by a 3-0 vote, recommends approval of the Select Board's budget of $3,361,000. Are there any questions?
I just want to make a clarification that you're adding 2.5 staff members.
No, we're adding 0.5.
It says 2.
That is a typo, sorry.
Okay, so
we're
it
adding
is 0.5. So
0.5.
So you'll be at 8 FTEs?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Then next is our salary reserve fund. The salary reserve fund is used for potential contract settlements, reclassifications, or other contractual issues that may come up in any particular year. The FY25 budget presented is $3,604,049. This is an increase of $2,663,229, represents a 283.1% difference from FY24. The FY25 budget increase is an effort to reserve money in anticipation of contract negotiations on both the town and school side of the budget. The subcommittee, by a vote of 3-0, recommends approval of the Select Board's budget of $3,604,049. Are there any questions? Next is our FinCom Reserve Fund. The FinCom, or Advisory and Finance Committee, Reserve Fund is used to fund unexpected emergency town expenses due to unforeseen circumstances. Examples include special elections, fuel, and utilities, etc. Requests for funds are made to the Advisory and Finance Committee, and if they are approved, the funds are transferred from this fund to the appropriate account. This is a level-funded budget. The subcommittee recommends approval by 3-0 vote of the Select Board's budget of $150,000. Are there any questions? Okay, next on the list, tax title and foreclosures. This budget covers the costs of land court recordings and legal services. These costs, primarily associated with real estate tax liens and foreclosures, are usually recovered by the town when the taxes are ultimately paid. This budget is level funded. It is $261,000. The subcommittee recommends by a 3-0 vote approval of the Select Board's budget of $261,000. Any questions? Mr. Green and Mr. Neerman and I had a swell time at this. Next is pension contributions. This budget, comprised of both the town and non-educational based school department pension contributions, represents the town's normal pension funding based on current employees and retirees using actuarial calculations plus an amount needed to amortize the unfunded prior liability. The increase in the FY25 budget is $1,467,672, an 8.0% increase from FY24. This budget is produced using the state schedule with a long-term goal of being fully funded by 2035. The chart above reflects the town employees and non-educational based school employees. The trust is managed and invested by the Plymouth Retirement Board, a 5-member board that meets on a regular basis. The subcommittee recommends by a vote of 3-0 approval of the Select Board's budget of $19,888,375. Are there any questions? Unemployment. The budget represents a transfer to the Unemployment Compensation Trust. The trust is used to cover unemployment compensation claims. This budget has increased by $40,220, compensating for the lack of CARES funding received last year. The contribution to the Unemployment Trust has increased. The subcommittee recommends by a 3-0 vote approval of the Select Board's budget of $60,220. Are there any questions? Okay, moving right along. Member insurance. This budget represents the taxpayer-funded employer contributions to the healthcare trust funds, one for medical and one for dental. The decrease in the FY25 budget is $944,740, a 2.3% decrease from FY24. The decrease is a result of a 5% increase in new employee contributions to health and dental premiums from 25% to 30%. In addition, placing all members on Medicare Part D prescriptions instead of private prescription plans has alleviated that debt. That has resulted in that decrease. The subcommittee, by a vote of 3-0, recommends approval of the Select Board's budget of $40,067,273. Any questions? Okay. OPEB trust funding. Other post-employee benefits, for those not knowing the acronym. This budget puts aside funds for the other post-employee benefits obligations of the town to its employees. The primary component of that liability is retiree health insurance benefits. The increase in the FY25 budget is $90,688, a 7.7% increase from FY24. The subcommittee recommends approval of the Select Board's budget of $1,263,179 by a 3-0 vote. Are there any questions? Compensated absences. This fund serves to pay out unused vacation and, if applicable, sick time to employees who exit their jobs. This budget is an increase of 20% for FY25 in anticipation of increased payouts of unused leave. The subcommittee, by a vote of 3-0, recommends approval of the Select Board's budget of $150,000. Any questions? Okay. Well, last but not least, community debt. The community debt covers 5 sections. So that's long-term debt, long-term interest, short-term interest, miscellaneous interest, and bond issuance costs. The increase in the long-term debt budget for FY25 is $1,877,541, a 19.8% increase from FY24. This budget reflects principal payments due on existing debt. The increase in the long-term interest budget for FY25 is $1,404,379, a 25.3% decrease from FY24. Sorry, that would be an increase. The decrease in the short-term interest budget for FY25 is 0, a 100% decrease from FY24. This budget reflects the interest on new approved projects in their early stages before a long-term bond is issued. The miscellaneous interest budget is level funded for FY25. This budget is primarily for interest paid on tax abatements. The bond issuance costs budget is unfunded for FY25. The budget reflects the costs of issuing bonds and that's not right. Sorry. The bond issuance cost budget is $25,000 for FY25. This budget reflects the cost of issuing bonds and bond anticipation notes paid up front. Let me just look at my paid upfront, such as legal, printing, etc., that are not covered by bond premiums. And the subcommittee recommends, sorry? Well, I didn't because I just misspoke. Thank you. The subcommittee recommends approval of the Select Board budget amounts for each of the debt and interest budgets listed above. It's just the verbiage in here is not correct. Oh, okay. Yeah, but the verbiage wasn't. Yeah, that's okay. So the numbers you see up there are correct. The verbiage was different, but the Select Board, the subcommittee recommends approval of the Select Board's budget amounts above for each of the debt and interest budget items listed by a 3-0 vote. Yeah, I will. No worries. Are there any questions?
I see Mr. Howard's digital hand. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So looking at the short-term interest of 0 in FY25, does that mean that no short-term debt will be taken on in fiscal year 25, or that no interest payments are planned?
Ms. Barrett will answer that question.
So the plan is to do a permanent bond issue in June for all the projects that are either completed or underway. If it ends up that a project sort of hasn't started yet, then we may anticipate doing short-term, but we've budgeted for it in the long term, so we would just make an adjustment internally for that. So we have sufficient funding for either long-term or short-term.
So in fact, the two have been combined for fiscally 25.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from Ms. Richards? No. Mr. Dunn, are you going to make a motion for me, please?
Motion to recommend approval.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Mr. Lawler has seconded the motion. We have a motion on the table to approve the Subcommittee B report of Article 7A. Do we have any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, we will go to the roll call to vote to approve
Thank you, everyone.
Article 7A, Subcommittee B. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Bizzarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Zaro Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuccaroli.
Yes.
The Advisory and Finance Committee votes unanimously to approve Article 7A, Subcommittee B, and recommend that to town meeting by a vote of 13 for, 0 against, 0 abstain. Thank you so much, Ms. Richards. That was quite a presentation.
Thank you very much.
So you can take a break. All right, up next is Mr. Dunn, the chair of Subcommittee C, Public Safety Services, Marine and Environmental. Along with Mr. Dunn on his committee is Mr. Young and Mr. Pizarro. The floor is yours.
And Mr. Cabana.
Oh, I don't have him on here. And Mr. Cabana.
I might have messed it up.
I think we made an in-season trade.
Oh, we did.
We
You're
did,
right.
with some
So
future
Mr.
considerations
We did.
and
So
a
Mr.
lot of
Cabana
cash.
was-
So that $150,000 that was budgeted for us, I think it's been
He came
spoken
over
for.
because he couldn't make his other one. So, yeah, so we made a last-minute trade, so we did have Mr. Cabana on our committee, which was fantastic. So I'm going to start with I can't see anything up there. Thank God I have it here. With the police budget, Chief Dana Flynn leads the police department. I don't think I have to explain to everyone what a police department does here. So the budget actually decreased by $722,000 and change because of the moving of the emergency 911 communications to the emergency management. We recommended unanimously 4-0 to recommend a budget that's consistent with the one approved by the Select Board of $16,430,690. And just wanted to highlight the co-response program that the police department's using, which has led to fewer arrests, officer complaints, injuries, and use of force incidents. And we think it's a really good program. It's being expanded to include weekends now, and we definitely were encouraged by that and appreciate that. Any questions on the police budget? Moving right along to the fire department, and thank you to Chief Neil Foley at the fire department for meeting with us. This represents an increase of $560,169, the majority of which comes from personnel services, which is $463,938 of that, which is mainly due to contractual pay increases. We had a lengthy discussion about some of the revolving funds at the meeting, which I appreciate Chief Foley entertaining us on all of the questions with that. And we also discussed the renovations to the fire stations, which seem to be going extremely well and coming in on time and under budget currently. I'm going to knock on wood, but looks great so far. Any questions on the fire department budget? Let's keep going. Next up, we had the Office of Emergency Management. As you can see, there's a wildly dramatic increase, which is only due to moving the emergency 911 communications from the police department to the emergency management department. So that's why you see such a, what looks like such an outrageous increase, which is really not. So we, by unanimous vote of 4-0, recommended that the Advisory and Finance Committee recommend approval of the budget of $1,405,439 for the emergency management. Any questions there? This is great. Next up, we have the Harbor Master, which is run by Harbor Master Chad Hunter and is now, as we know, under the Police Department. The subcommittee, by a vote of 4-0, recommended approval of the budget of $642,355. We discussed the reorganization and how that's going, which seems to be going well. And there's also the proposal that we had to increase pay to attract more employees for the part-time positions, which are currently going a lot to our neighboring communities who are offering more, so to try to draw in some more people there. Any questions there? Almost finished here. On to energy and environment, which was also underwent a kind of structural change here from the Department of Marine and Environmental Affairs. The Harbor Master was placed under the Police Department, as we know, and the Animal Control Division was placed under Health and Human Services. The budget here represents an increase of $148,540, and our subcommittee, by a vote of 4-0, recommended a budget consistent with that approved by the Select Board, which is $878,986. And the subcommittee was also noted that we are very appreciative of the grant funds brought in by this department. Any questions on that? Awesome.
Okay. Mr. Lally, could you please make a motion to pass Article 7A, Subcommittee C?
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Green, could you second that motion, please?
Seconded.
Thank you. Any discussion on Article 7A, Subcommittee C? Hearing and seeing none, we will vote. How do you vote on Article 7A, Subcommittee C? Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Zarrow Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuparoli.
Yes.
And the Advisory and Finance Committee votes 13-4-0 against, 0 abstain to approve Article 7A, Subcommittee C to town meeting. Thank you, Mr. Dunn. All right, next up, moving right along, is Mr. Lally, who is the chair of Subcommittee D, Public Works. Along with him, hardworking committee members Mr. Young, Mr. Howard, and Mr. Lawler. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So the overall proposed budget for FY25 is $13,955,644, which represents a 0.2% increase in the overall budget for the department. The expenses are broken down in part. 56% of the expenses are related to personnel line. Other expenses comprise 26% of the combined budgets, and fuel and utilities is the remaining 18%. So the first department we click through here, went to is engineering. %89 of that budget is personnel expense. Pavement marking is the largest component of the other expenses line, and it's in the second half of the fiscal year that the department typically incurs the bulk of the pavement expenses. And the committee voted unanimously to approve the budget as presented. Any questions on engineering? Right. Next is highway. The budget as presented represents a 0.2 or 0.2% decrease from the FY24 budget. 87% of is personnel expenses, and the other increase includes a $25,000 a year under other expenses for every other year crushing expense. So the town rents a crusher every second year to deal with waste material from road work. There was a discussion about the challenges of filling vacancies and how that's led to overtime in this department in particular. There was also a question of if snow plows were in this budget, and they're in the capital expense line for this year, not in the capital expenses budget, not in this operating budget. So it was, again, the subcommittee recommended unanimously to approve the highway department budget. Any questions? The next budget was administration. Again, 95% of this budget is personnel expenses. The OSHA training program that was instituted, I think, a year ago continues to be very successful. And the budget as presented represents a 2.5% decrease from the FY24 budget. The subcommittee voted unanimously to recommend the budget as presented. No questions? The largest budget in DPW is facilities maintenance. It's comprised of 32% for personnel expenses, 29% for other expenses, 39% for fuel and utilities. This represents a 0.5% increase over the FY24 budget. Again, this has an increase in overtime. Part of this is due to the fact that there's been an increased demand for support for events in Memorial Hall. There is a revenue stream to help offset this. And there was a question about the decrease in the diesel generator line, and that was because of a purchase of a generator, installation of a new generator, which reduced maintenance costs. The subcommittee voted unanimously to recommend this budget for approval. Any questions? Snow and ice, one of my favorite budgets. There is a 15% increase in the personnel line that's driven by anticipated contractual increases for personnel. This is a flat-funded budget as proposed. There was a question about the cost of using DPW employees versus contractors for snow removal. The DPW costs for personnel are around $50 an hour, but does not include personnel expenses. Contractors charge between $100 and $140 an hour, depending upon the type of material, vehicle they're providing, and all of the de-icing materials that contractors use is provided by the town. So after that discussion, the subcommittee recommended approval of this budget as presented. Any questions? Fleet maintenance. This represents a decrease of 1.5% over the FY24. The budget is comprised of 22% for personnel expenses, 24% for other, and 54% for fuel and utilities. Training expenses are up because of the introduction of EV vehicles into the fleet. And the overall change, as I mentioned, is a decrease of 1.5%. The subcommittee recommended approval of this budget unanimously. questions on fleet? Okay. On to solid waste. There's a 5.1% increase as part of this budget. 37% for personnel expenses, 67% for other expenses. The increase to personnel expense is driven primarily by contractual obligations, as are similar other budgets in the town. The other expenses line is up because of increased costs for landfill monitoring in Manamet. Again, there was some discussion, but in general, actually the subcommittee recommended approval of this budget as presented as well. Any questions? The crematory budget is proposing a decrease of 1.1% over FY24. Personnel accounts for 83%. The overall change in the proposed budget versus FY24 is due to a recent retirement. The subcommittee recommends approval unanimously of this budget as proposed.
Ms. Richards, you have a question? Comment?
I'm sorry, were they planning on filling that position?
Ms. McGuire, Diane McGuire, has recently been appointed, and I think she's splitting her position between the crematory and the cemetery.
She is on the Zoom call, if you would like clarification. Ms. McGuire, would you like to chime in? No? Okay. Gave it a shot. Didn't work.
Very good.
Back to you.
I'm sorry, I'm here.
All right. Thank you for saving my
Hi,
butt.
this is Diane. So I'm currently, I was just a few weeks ago appointed as the permanent superintendent, and eventually, yes, we will fill my former position, which was the administrative assistant position.
Thank you.
So that, you're welcome.
Okay. Back to you, Mr. Lally.
All right. I'm at the cemetery budget. This represents a 4.6% increase over FY24. Personnel expenses are 93% of that budget. And the personnel expenses are primarily driving this increase. It's due to the demand for, or the requirement for overtime is being driven by the demand for weekend services, and there is a revenue stream associated with that expense to offset it. And again, the subcommittee recommends approval unanimously of this budget. Parks and Forestry. This is a 0.4% decrease over FY24. Again, another budget that's primarily personnel, 82% for personnel, 18% for other. There are no departmental requests, and I don't remember why we had a decrease in this budget, but didn't make that note. But the subcommittee recommended unanimously to recommend approval of this budget. And that concludes the presentation for Subcommittee D.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Lally. Do I have a motion to approve? Ms. Tompkins, would you like to move to approve Article 7A, Subcommittee D?
So moved.
Thank you. And Mr. Zuccaroli, would you like to second that motion?
I will.
Thank you. Any discussion on Article 7A, Subcommittee D? Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Zaro-Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuccaroli?
Yes.
Thank you. So the Advisory and Finance Committee, by a vote of 13 for, 0 against, and 0 abstain, recommend to town meeting to approve Article 7A, Subcommittee D. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lally, for that presentation. Next up is Subcommittee E, Planning and Development, Community Resources. Chair Bruce Howard, committee members Luca Bannett and Lorenzo Pizarro. The floor is yours, Mr. Howard.
Just an update on that. Mr. Cabana did not join us on Subcommittee E due to scheduling conflict. So Mr. Pizarro and I did the heavy lifting for the subcommittee.
We have queued up for you.
Are we going to? Okay, so it is the deck. So I had submitted both the presentation deck and the report for Subcommittee E, which covers both planning and development as well as health and human services. So special thanks to Ms. Brady and Mr. Hartman and their staffs for doing all the work of preparing the budget and answering our questions. Next slide. Next slide. So that shows the divisions under those, under the various, under the two departments. So we'll skip this slide and go right on to, so this slide summarizes the budget comparison, comparing fiscal 2024 with fiscal 25, showing the variance and the percentage changes. So let's go on to the next slide and we'll talk about planning and development first. Next slide. So first up is community planning. Personnel services have increased $49,306 or 6.6%. This is largely due to contractual obligations. In addition, to address succession planning, the position of Deputy Director of Planning and Development has been created. Also of note in this department is the working in conjunction with the Planning Board, working on the development of the 2-year-long process for updating Plymouth's master plan. Also of note here is the responsibility for the energy functions within the town budget are moving from the community planning to the Department of Energy and Environment. This is moving the $30,000 in expenses, but does not move the salary for support of these functions. The subcommittee recommends approval of the town manager select board recommended budget of $987,453 by unanimous vote of 2-0. Any questions?
No questions. Continue.
Next up is the Redevelopment Authority. So Plymouth's Redevelopment Authority is independent of the town, and the budget provides partial funding for the PRA's staff and activities. To adjust for inflation, the budget has been increased by 2%. The subcommittee recommends approval of the town manager select board recommended budget of $24,357 by a unanimous vote of 2-0.
No questions.
No questions. Thank you. Next up is animal control. So animal control has been, will be moved from DMEA to public health within Health and Human Services. So this division runs the town's animal shelter, enforces the town's animal bylaws, and provides support to residents encountering encounters with wildlife. So there is budget increases for salary step changes, stipends, and buybacks. And the subcommittee recommends approval of the town manager select board recommended budget of $205,971 by a unanimous vote of 2-0. And that's on the next slide. Right, that one.
And we have no questions for you, Mr. Howard.
Thank you. So continuing on, public health. So the recommended budget for fiscal 25 is $419,631, which is an increase of $11,951. Included in this are step changes for salaried employees, as well as addition of $500 for printing supplies, and a note here in July 2024, the food inspector position for Plymouth goes out to bid. Winning bid may result in a higher line item amount. Also of note is in this budget request is a reclassification of administrative assistant to health administrative assistant. And that change is the result of changes or the performance of the role warrants this change. Let me see. Okay, and the subcommittee recommends approval of the select board recommended budget of $419,631 by a unanimous vote of 2-0.
And I see no questions.
Okay, no questions there. Good. Moving on to the Center for Active Living. The recommended budget for Cal is $838,230, which is an increase of $147,057, which is approximately 21% increase. A large portion of this cost is due to the department head, that is Ms. Brady's position, is being fully funded by the Cal, where in the past that position had been split between 3 departments, the Cal picking up a third, recreation a third, and the library picking up 34%, the remaining balance. Other salary increases are due to 2 additional positions: the Assistant Commissioner of Health and Human Services, which will be fully funded under the Cal budget, and Assistant Director of Elder Affairs. In addition, a part-time building custodian is being requested, added to the budget, and this is due to the size of the Cal, the increase in the number of patrons, the addition of the industrial restaurant, and increase in events and programs operating during and after hours. The subcommittee recommends approval of the select board recommended budget of $838,230 by unanimous 2-0 vote. Let me see, just a couple other notes here. there were a decrease in expenses where the HVAC contracts are being transferred to facilities, and the Cal nutrition budget is being decreased with the goal of looking to use the revolving fund to fund this Cal nutrition budget going forward. So that is moving forward. Any questions on this?
We have no questions for you, Mr. Howard. Do we have
Veteran services?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Veteran services is recommended budget of $628,043, which is a decrease of $27,968. The largest decrease is in the expenses of the veterans benefit line item, and this is a result of that the town is losing our older veterans, and the younger ones are not reaching out for help as much. Just a reminder, the Office of Veteran Services reimburses the town 75% of what we pay out for veteran benefits. The budget includes a longevity increase, and we've also added a printing line item for $500. The subcommittee recommends approval of the select board recommended budget of $618,043 by unanimous vote of 2 to 0.
Okay, we have a question or comment from Mr. Lawler. The floor is yours.
I just have a quick question on the budget observations. It says on one line that the total budget is $628,043, and then on the top line,
Yeah, there's a $10,000 encumbrance, which brings that down to $618,043.
Thank you, Mr. Howard.
Any other questions for Mr. Howard at this point? Go ahead.
Thank you. Moving on to the library. Total budget proposed is $2,256,708, which is an increase of $136,718, or a 6.06 increase. Let's see. We've got the proposed budget includes increase in wages of $125,622 as a result of step changes, longevity increases, and PTO buyback, one-time payment for an adult basic education instructor, and reclass, so funding for a change of the literacy coordinator. In the expenses, there were increases in the cost of contracts and product costs, which we're seeing pretty much everywhere. Should also be noted that the lawn care is being transferred to the town budget. Printing costs have increased for library materials, so that's included. And there is also a mileage reimbursement is being transferred to the town budget. Let's see, what else do we want to cover here? I think that about covers, did I cover everything? So department heads moving to the Cal budget. Yeah, there was an increase in department equipment. So this was one of the few department equipment budgets being requested, and this is to cover 2 new copiers and special shelving for the main library. The subcommittee recommends approval of the select board recommended budget of $2,256,078 by a unanimous vote of 2-0.
And no
Any
questions?
questions?
No questions.
Recreation is up next. The fiscal year 2025 Recreation Division budget is $611,630, which is an increase of $808,384 or 1.3%. So again, this represents the decrease in salaries or the decrease due to the movement of the Health and Human Services Commissioner was offset the increases that occurred in the budget lines. The big change here is in addressing the temporary salaries for seasonal summer staff. And we heard reference to this earlier, but in order to be competitive, particularly for positions like the lifeguards, it's recommended that we increase the temporary salaries by the amount of $65,518 in order to offset some of those expenses. We are looking to cut the staffing at White Horse Beach from 7 days to 3 days a week. That would be Friday through Sunday. And Fresh Pond from 3 days would be reduced to 2 days a week, Saturday and Sunday. This savings of $38,304 will help supplement the increase in wages for the seasonal staff. There is also an increase in the detail line for Morton Park police details during the weekends and holidays in the summer. The subcommittee recommends approval of the select board recommended budget of $611,630 by a unanimous vote of 2-0.
And we have no questions for you.
Thank you. Disabilities. There was a request to increase by $50 the office supplies line. Otherwise, no changes to this division's budget. Subcommittee recommends approval of the select board's recommended budget of $350 by a unanimous vote of 2-0.
I'm shocked that there are no questions.
Me too. And the 1749 courthouse, a slight increase in building supplies due to need and cost increases. Otherwise, the budget remains largely unchanged. So the subcommittee recommends approval of the select board's recommended budget of $24,697 by a unanimous vote of 2-0.
And I see no questions. So thank you, Mr. Howard, for that presentation. Do I have a motion to approve Article 7A, Subcommittee E? And Ms. Butler has made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Ms. Richards has second. Do we have any discussion on Subcommittee E? Seeing and hearing none, let's go through the roll call. Ms. Butler, how do you vote on Articles 7A, Subcommittee E?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Earl Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuccaroli?
Yes.
And once again, the Advisory and Finance Committee approves Article 7E, Subcommittee E, to town meeting by a vote of 13 for, 0 against, and 0 abstentions. That brings
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Howard. That brings up Subcommittee F, Public Schools. Chair Robert Zuccaroli and committee members Daniel Green, Tim Lawler, and Brian Dunn. The floor is yours, Mr. Zuccaroli.
Thank you. I also see that Dr. Campbell and Dr. Blaisdell is here. We can take any questions that the committee may have after the presentation. So the subcommittee met on January 25th, 2024, with Dr. Blaisdell and Dr. Campbell, Superintendent and Assistant Superintendent of Schools in attendance. Also at the meeting were Michelle Badger, Chair of the Plymouth School Committee, Kathy Johnson, Secretary of the Plymouth School Committee, Select Board Member Kevin Canty, and members of the public were also in attendance. Throughout my presentation, you may hear what I like to refer to as teacher speak. We tend to talk in a lot of letters, acronyms, and abbreviations. So if anyone has any questions about what I'm saying or any of the abbreviations, I'll try to explain them as I go through the presentation, and just please feel free to ask me afterwards. The Plymouth Public School budget is developed to meet the increasing needs of students, faculty, and staff, as the educational, social, and emotional needs of students and staff continue to increase, as we continue to respond to the needs and the challenges that were presented from the COVID-19 pandemic and health crisis. We seek to respond to the learning loss that was incurred, as well as the social needs and the socialization needs of the students. Also, the budget was developed in conjunction with the idea that our facilities are aging. Some of our facilities are 100 years old and older, that the school department uses to educate our students and house the various programs and administration for our students. Under the direction of Dr. Campbell, Plymouth School Superintendent, and the Plymouth School Committee, priority has been given to developing a budget that's fiscally responsible, yet maintaining the services that our schools offer to our students. The FY25 budget reflects the reality that state and federal funds in the form of ARPA, so that would be the American Rescue Plan, and ESSER grants, that would be the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, will be going away in 2025 and 2026. These will impact school budgets across the country, not just here in Plymouth. These grants were meant to provide relief throughout the health crisis, and it will be important that we maintain the services that were developed as a result of this going forward. Plymouth Schools is beginning the difficult task of meeting the needs of our students without some of these extra funds, and operating within the guidelines that the town has set forth. The end of federal and state aid, however, does not diminish the needs of our students. As a result of the pandemic and learning loss, our students' needs have only increased. The challenges that have been presented through the health crisis include increased costs in utilities, supplies, as well as fuel, increases in multilingual student services, our multilingual student population, increased demands in special education and for our special education population, as well as the social emotional needs of our students. I mean, last year, for example, there was an increase of 14% from the Massachusetts OSD. That would be the Operational Services Division, which mainly services our special ed students. There was not that much of an increase this year. However, I believe the increase was 5%, but these increases continue. I'll mention some of these state mandates a little later. Also this year, Plymouth Public Schools is entering into contract negotiations with the associations to provide contracts with faculty and staff that are fair and equitable. The added variable of these negotiations will most likely require a fall supplemental appropriation at the fall town meeting. Plymouth Schools educates approximately 7,254 students, and approximately 24% of these students are on a free and reduced lunch plan. Jeanette or Dan, if you have the slide, you can present that slide, what drives the budget now. The one before it, the first one, the one before that one. Thank you. So I want to highlight this. These are some of the budget drivers that result in 4.8, almost $5 million. So existing teacher contract advancements to the tune of $1,300,000. A loss of reserve account to avoid an additional reduction in force, that would be $800,000. Staffing previously accounted for through ESSER grants in the amount of $780,146. Supplies and materials previously accounted for through ESSER grants in the amount of $417,600. And just as an example of this, a pallet of paper that at one point cost $900 is now costing anywhere between $1,200 and $1,600. This is across the board. This isn't just affecting Plymouth. Agricultural tuitions in the amount of $322,236. Some may ask, what is this agricultural school tuition? If Plymouth has students who are accepted into programs that Plymouth does not offer, agriculture being one of them, it is incumbent upon the school department to pay the tuition for those students who are being educated out of the district. Special education services, transportation, and tuitions in the amount of $701,408, and transportation and crossing guards in the amount of $496,520, totaling $4.8 million. These are significant budget drivers that year over year don't change. These are some of the fixed costs that we hear about. Other concerns, other budget drivers are certificated salary increases, clerical salary increases, and other salary increases, which total about 4.3%, and non-salary expenses for FY25, including contracted services, supplies and materials, and other expenses totaling 10.12%. Could we advance to the next slide, please? I've included this slide, and these slides are directly from the school department's presentation, Dr. Campbell's presentation. I've included this slide to show what transportation and transporting students is like across the town of Plymouth. Simply put, there is no easy way to get from point A to point B. Our buses do not have, school buses do not have a direct north, south, east, west grid to follow. There is approximately 104 square miles on which students need to be transported. This is a challenge for busing and transporting students. While bus routes have been collapsed, they've been collapsed about as much as they can be without keeping students on a bus going to and from school for an hour or more at a time. Could we advance to the next slide? Our buildings are old. As you can see, Hedge School was built in 1910, and while it is one of the best maintained schools in the district, it's an old facility, and our older facilities do have significant challenges, up to and including space. This is a concern, and to meet the needs of these aging facilities, that incurs a cost. If we could go to the next slide, please. Our multilingual students who speak languages other than English, has increased 343% since fiscal year 2019. That's a significant increase, and that fluctuates. Our students, once students present themselves at the school, we are obligated, the Plymouth Schools is obligated to educate those students and to provide language services and translation services, not only for the students, but also for families as well. The proposed Board of Select Board budget of $118,734,770 reflects a change from the December 4th, 2023 proposal of $119,934,770. with $1.2 million being held in salary reserve for the purposes of contract negotiation. In order to complete these negotiations and for the school department to bargain in good faith, there will be the need for a supplemental appropriation for the fall town meeting. Plymouth School Committee met on January 25th, just before the subcommittee's meeting, and with a vote of 5-1, supported the Select Board's budget of $118,734,770 to maintain current services, essential programs, and to add no new initiatives to the current fiscal year. This budget has been carefully formulated to ensure that essential programs, staff support, and operational needs continue. There are no new initiatives in this budget, and supplemental funding will be required that may arise from contract negotiations. And that will be at the conclusion of the contract negotiations. There's really no way to gauge, no one has a crystal ball to see how contract negotiations and what the needs will be going forward. The budget process has been maintained and has maintained the same process over the past 3 years, with an approximately 1% reduction for every 2 to 3 years. And that's while meeting all contract negotiations. It's essential that a budget be developed that provides that is, again, fiscally responsible and educationally responsible, ensuring a fair, equitable public education for all of our students. It's essential that programs continue, that staff receive the necessary support they need, and that the operational needs of the buildings and the administration, faculty, and staff in those buildings continue. Again, there are no new initiatives in this budget. This budget reflects the current needs of the department. This is what the school department needs for this year. This budget has been developed in conjunction with the town administration. There really has been a cooperation between the school department and town administration, which is different than anything that's happened in the past. This has helped to develop a budget that is transparent, that is fair, just, and equitable. The set aside of $1.2 million begins the contract negotiations, and again, is a starting place. This set-aside ensures accuracy in and preciseness in the request. This is the request for the supplemental appropriation. It assures accountability and responsibility. It incurs informed decision-making and public transparency and buy-in with flexibility and adjustability. There are some unique challenges that will continue to be presented. I've highlighted some of them here. Reducing the need for contract transportation. The school department is working in conjunction with state legislators to try to find a solution to Plymouth's unique problem of transporting students. We are the largest district in the Commonwealth, and yet we receive no reimbursement from the state for transportation. We need to provide continued support for a growing multilingual student population. We need to provide continued support for our special education population. There is always the growing concern for aging facilities and the necessary capital improvement that's incumbent with those buildings. Contract negotiations will present a unique challenge this year. And it's important to note that over the past negotiation cycles, that the contracts that have been negotiated have been modest. Plymouth has a unique situation of retaining teachers. However, that's beginning to shift with teachers moving to other districts that offer a higher salary. The quality of education of our students in Plymouth is important for us to maintain. So hiring and retaining staff and meeting district comparisons is also a challenge. Changes in state and federal requirements will be a continued challenge. These are some of the unfunded mandates that we continually hear about. For example, the governor is putting forth an initiative to improve and change literacy education across the Commonwealth. I believe the number is about $33 million that she's setting aside for improved literacy, reading and writing education. And with current research and evidence-based programs, that the best practices and instructional practices could upend what's going on in classrooms across the Commonwealth right now. That will be a significant impact, not only on Plymouth schools, but also on schools across the Commonwealth. And we need to meet those challenges. Meeting and cooperating with town officials and the guidelines set forth. There's always a budget guideline that's set forth, and it's going to be important going forward for everyone to work within those guidelines. Increasing the need to offer academic support and academic recovery to our students post-pandemic. This includes learning loss, social emotional needs, as well as the custodial needs of some of our students and their families. So having said that, we can advance to the last slide. The subcommittee for Plymouth Public Schools recommends that the Advisory and Finance Committee adopt the following recommendations to town meeting: to approve the school budget consistent with the Select Board's recommendation of $118,734,770 for the operating budget for Plymouth Public Schools. This recommendation includes the Select Board's recommendation of $1.2 million in salary reserve for the schools, in addition to other funding that is in there for all collective bargaining agreements. Either myself, Dr. Campbell, or Dr. Blaisdell can take any questions right now before I go on to the next two.
We do have a question from Ms. Richards. The floor is yours.
This is for either Dr. Blaisdell or Dr. Campbell. I'd like to find out if there are any plans to help mitigate this budget, I think you're calling it budget deficit, in lieu of fees for transportation or athletic fees or anything else?
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Chris Campbell, Superintendent of Schools. Happy to answer that question. Yes, so I believe that question was brought up at the last joint meeting, and we actually had that on the agenda once already with the school committee. We're looking at several fees, actually. We're looking at athletic fees, we're looking at transportation fees, and we're looking at some tuition fees that we have in our early education center. So there will be most likely some recommendations made within the next couple of school committee meetings. So by the end of March, I would imagine that we would see some changes that are being recommended and voted on for the next fiscal year.
Okay. Also, thank you. And my other question is the numbers for staffing previously accounted for through ESSER and supplies and materials previously accounted for through ESSER. So those amounts were amounts that you didn't incur prior to the pandemic?
So since the pandemic, we have reduced our level service budget over the past 4 years by about just under $6 million. And in doing so, we were very strategic as to use both CARES Act funds, ESSER funds, those state and federal grants to alleviate what would have been a hemorrhaging of our school department without those funds for staffing, for supplies and materials, for some contracts for various functions of our school department. And over the course of the last year or so, we have slowly put that back into our operational budget as much as we could. Last year was actually our most significant reduction to our budget in recent years. So our level service budget was actually reduced by $3 million initially, ended up being 2.2 with the salary reserve account being set aside for us for the purposes of salaries. But we had some significant reductions there. So this budget, as Mrs. Zabaroli pointed out, is a level service budget, meaning everything that we're currently doing, whether it's through our current operational budget or grants that we've still had available to us to offset that significant reduction, that is included in this budget. There are no new initiatives. There is no money for contractual settlements or agreements that may be successful at the conclusion of the year. But if we did not add that to this budget, we would have significant reductions either in staff or supplies and materials, which we've cut on average 10% annually for the last 3 years.
Okay, so I'm not sure if that answered my question. So he lists the significant budget drivers, and 2 of those were staffing and supplies that were previously accounted for through ESSER. So I'm assuming that was emergency. Forgive me if I don't know the exact.
Yeah, that was the relief fund. Correct. That was the relief funding, the emergency relief funding that was available to the school department. So that was previously accounted for through those relief funds. Those relief funds will go away in September of 24. And unless we're going to eliminate additional staff, we did reduce 15 staff last year through attrition, but we eliminated 15 positions last year. If we did not account for that in this proposed level service budget, we would be looking at additional reductions in force in order to meet the shortfall.
Okay, but this staffing and these supplies were not, this money was not available prior to COVID, prior to 2020.
That money was
1.2 million.
previously accounted for in our operational budgets in years past prior to the pandemic. We were forced to reduce it when revenues declined, and we were able to supplant it through those grants. So now that those grants are going away, unless we again eliminate that from our operational budget, we find the need to ask for those moving forward.
Okay, I just have one other question about the lunch. Mr. Zubaroli referenced, I think 20-something% of our students are free lunch. Is 23.7%. Is it true that all of 100% of our students are receiving free lunch through the state at the current time?
Yes, you are correct. So that has been funded for the last couple of years, free lunch, which is critically important to us. So yes, so that is a sort of demographic figure that is used and has been used in the past. What we look at now is what we refer to as high needs. So students that may be low income, students that may whose language first language may not be English, and students who may be English language learners. So our economically disadvantaged students number actually is at 35% currently, which would account for anyone that's receiving, not only would be eligible for free lunch through federal guidelines that exist, but also qualify for other federal and state assistance. And we no longer have to collect those numbers. The state is giving us those numbers. So we actually have over a third of our students and families that are considered economically disadvantaged at this time. When you look at high needs, those categories that I mentioned before, we're actually at over 46%. So nearly half of our students are considered high needs, either for poverty, limited English, or students that are with disabilities, which has increased 35% in the last 5 years, actually.
Okay, so thank you. So really, the reference to the 23.7% of these students on a free or reduced lunch program really is irrelevant, except for the fact that it references 23.7% of the students qualify for a reduced lunch. But in reality, all of the students within Plymouth receive free lunch. That's really my question.
Yes, so currently the state is supplementing that free lunch. Correct. That's across the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Do you anticipate that the state is going to continue offering free lunch through FY25?
I'm not sure. It would be a wonderful thing if they do. It's been a great asset to our families and our students. Just to be clear, our food service program is not part of our operational budget. It is self-sustaining, meaning that it's all based on money that's been brought in from consumers. So we've never actually had a budget for our food service program. It's not part of our operational budget.
Okay, so the lunch program isn't part of your budget at all?
It never has been.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lawler has a question. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Dr. Campbell. How you doing?
Well, how are you?
I have a question for you. Out of curiosity, will the quote-unquote lost revenue of $800,000 be spent by June 30th of this year?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Like a follow-up? We have a question from Ms.
No follow-up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Zara Abraham, the floor is yours.
Hello. I don't know how important this is or not, but I'm just curious about it. I I think in the slide before, it was mentioned that the transportation fees, right, yeah, the next one, forward, sorry. Well, the transportation fees are not reimbursed by the Commonwealth, right? I'm just actually curious about why they're not reimbursed right there.
I'd be happy to speak to that. So, as Mr. Zuccaroli pointed out, we are the largest, geographically, the largest school district in the Commonwealth, actually, probably in the New England area, being over 100 square miles. We have 96 and a half square miles of actual land with about 400 miles of roads. We run a 3-tiered bus system, approximately 60 to 65 buses 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the afternoon to meet the demand of our 7,200 students. The reason being is the state only reimburses for regional school districts. And they did that several years ago as an incentive to smaller communities to get together and consolidate their school districts because there was resources that were being spent on these small districts, and as an incentive, the state has reimbursed those regional districts. And as Mr. Zuccaroli pointed out when he showed the map, we are larger than the majority of regional districts. So it's unfortunate that there isn't some exceptions to the rule, but we continue to work hard with our state legislators to see if we can get some reform. I've actually had 3 meetings with both Department of Education and the Executive Office of Education and the state regarding this matter to see if we can make some traction in this regard. And we're always looking to find ways to reduce our need for contracted services. It is very expensive to transport students in the town of Plymouth. It's money that we don't like to spend. We have to spend it. We need to get our students to school. That being said, we're trying to find any way we can, either through legislation, through consolidation, through grant funds that we have actually invested in previous years to reduce some of our runs. And we also are responsible to transport our charter students that go to charter schools. We have taken over one of the charter schools internally, and that saves us approximately $175,000 annually. So continuing to look at that, continuing to look at how we can reduce our need to contract out and to be more efficient. We did an efficiency study last year, and we actually were able to collapse 2 runs, which again saves us about $160,000. But yes, it's frustrating to spend as much money as we do on dollars that aren't going directly towards instruction in our classrooms. But we're doing everything we can to try to correct that over time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for Dr. Campbell, Mr. Zuccaroli, Mr. Blaisdell? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Wright, would you like to make a motion?
Oh, wait, Mr. Chairman, there are 2 more.
I'm sorry.
There are 2 more points to this. That's okay. These will go much more quickly. The Medicaid program. Historically, this program generates $2.50 and $3.50 in Medicaid reimbursement for every dollar appropriated in the budget. A contracted billing service receives 4% of the reimbursement for its service as a fee for service. The subcommittee recommends approval of the Medicaid budget consistent with the Select Board's recommendation of $329,434. And the out-of-district transportation cost center reflects the costs associated with transporting students to other schools that offer educational programs not offered in Plymouth. This includes Voc Tech programs, Voc Tech placements. These are state mandated, and Plymouth is required to pay transportation costs for students who need to be educated outside of the district. The subcommittee recommends approval of out-of-district transportation consistent with the Select Board's recommendation of $80,040. Does anyone have any questions on either of these two?
We have no questions. Okay, thank you, Mr. Zuccaroli, and I'm going to go back to Mr. Wright for a motion to approve Article 7A, Subcommittee F.
Yeah, motion to move forward.
Thank you. And Mr. Lally, would you like to second that motion, please?
Second.
So we have a motion on the table to approve Article 7A, Subcommittee F. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Zara Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuccaroli?
Yes.
Thank you. And the Advisory and Finance Committee, by a vote of 13 for, 0 against, 0 abstentions, recommends to town meeting to approve Article 7A, Subcommittee F. Thank you, gentlemen, for all of your input and insight.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you
so
very much.
This brings up the next 5 articles are for self-sustaining enterprise funds, 7B through 7F. I chaired that committee along with Gail Butler and Joe Lally. So I'll present each of the 5 enterprise budgets separately, and we'll vote on them separately. Okay, I suggest you pay attention because there's a quiz at the end. Tickets to the next Taylor Swift concert is on the line. Do I have your attention? All right. You're going to win. I know, you pay attention. That is true. Okay, so we're going to start with the water. We have water up there. Okay, great. Okay, so these enterprise funds, they're all self-sustaining, and I'm going to start with water, which is Subcommittee G, and the synopsis is the Water Division of DPW is responsible for the operation and maintenance of Plymouth's water treatment, transmission, and distribution systems, including 12 wells, 10 pump houses, and 4 booster stations. The head of the division is Peter Gordon. He is with us tonight. He is the water superintendent. Budget observations. The primary source of revenue for this enterprise fund is the ratepayers who get their water from the town. This revenue stream is strong and continues to grow. The costs are higher across the board, especially electricity, heat, propane, and increased mandated water testing, which is affected by continued increasing cost of chemicals. Mr. Gordon presented a level-funded budget for fiscal 24-25. He stated that there are 4 open positions, which contributes to a slight decrease in personal costs. He has bids outstanding for chemical prices and expects to receive current pricing by May, at which point he can adjust the budget in the fall if needed. He did explain that a 36.7% or $874,000 rise in debt service is primarily due to the Manomet pressure line and the federal furnace water main replacement. He calls this a worst-case scenario. So the proposed budget from the Select Board is $8,110,108, which is a 13.3% increase from the fiscal 2024 revised budget. Ms. Butler and I voted 2-0 to recommend to town meeting to approve the water budget. Any questions? Okay. Do I get? Yep, we need a motion. Thank you. Mr.
I'll
Lally
second it.
has moved. Do I have a second to
I
this
will
motion?
second it.
And
Ms. Richards.
Ms. Richards, I heard a voice. I couldn't see you. Ms. Richards has seconded the motion. Do we have any discussion on the water budget? Okay. We are going to take a vote to approve 7B water. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green? Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Zaro Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Superoli.
Yes.
The Advisory and Finance Committee votes 13-4, 0 against, 0 abstentions.
Yes.
Did I miss you? All right. 13-0. Nothing personal, Mr. Lawler. To approve the water budget for town meeting to approve. So thank you for that. That brings us up to sewer, 7B. The sewer division of the DPW is responsible for the operation and maintenance of the town's sanitary sewer collection and treatment systems. The division is headed by wastewater manager Doug Pinard, who is with us on Zoom tonight. I appreciate that. Ms. Butler and I sat down with him and went through the budget. The primary source of revenue for the enterprise fund is the rates paid by the sewer system users. Fees paid by septic haulers are another significant source of revenue. Budget shows increases due to increasing cost of living adjustments and increased cost for wastewater treatment plant due to the increased cost of disposal. Mr. Pinard stated that he has presented a level-funded budget with a 0.9% increase in the overall budget for the sewer enterprise fund. He also mentioned that he'd be keeping a particular eye on the continually increasing cost of chemicals and disposal. Electricity costs also increased, as we're finding across all the venues in the town, 6.1%, primarily due to rate increases. Ms. Butler and I voted to recommend this budget. Any questions? Okay. Do I have a motion? Mr. Dunn has moved to approve the sewer enterprise fund. Mr. Lawler, would you like to second it, please?
Yes, I'll second that, please.
Okay. Would you like to vote twice on this one? Okay, any discussion? We have a motion on the table to approve the sewer fund. No? Okay. Mr. Green, would you like to make a motion to approve the sewer budget?
Motion to approve the sewer budget.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Cabana, could you please second that motion?
I can.
Thank you so much. There is a motion on the table. Any discussion?
Didn't we just do it?
Did we already do that? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, let's vote. Ms. Butler?
Yes.
It's getting late. Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Couldn't hear you.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lally? I swapped you guys. Okay. Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Zara Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuparoli?
Yes.
Okay, the Advisory and Finance Committee has approved.
What was her vote? Ms.
It was all yes.
Oh, yes.
So it's a 13-0 vote to approve the water budget and recommend town meeting approve it as well. So, okay, now we move on to solid waste. The solid waste division of the Department of Public Works is responsible for the management, operation, and maintenance of the Manomet Transfer Station with recycling, materials transport, administration of sticker sales, and violation processing. The department is headed by Bill Coyle, DPW Director, since being hired last summer. I believe he is right here. Thank you. Perfect. Use of the Manomet Transfer Station remains fairly consistent. This budget has a slight increase to $1.281 million from the previous fiscal year. However, challenges in the greater waste disposal and recycling industries continue to present themselves, as well as rising expenses. Mr. Coyle stated that he has a focus on taking items out of the solid waste stream early in the process. The $21,756 variance in tipping and disposal is attributed to the hiring of a new part-time position, according to Mr. Coyle, which could be offset by bog sales. Mr. Coyle is encouraging the recycling of goods. The subcommittee believes this enterprise fund is well run. Ms. Butler and I voted 2-0 to recommend to town meeting. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Green.
Has the town done any kind of research on if pay-as-you-go or pay-as-you-throw is still kind of the future?
And Mr. Coyle.
Good evening, Bill Coyle, DPW Director. So we currently do utilize pay-as-you-throw at the transfer station, so it's been very successful. One of the things, too, that we're implementing next fiscal year is a take something, leave something program. I think it was mentioned in the first portion of the solid waste budget. So that's something we're also hopeful will take some of the items out of the solid waste stream as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. Mr. Howard, would you please make a motion to approve the enterprise solid waste operations budget?
So moved.
Thank you. And Mr. Pizarro, would you please second that motion?
Second.
Excellent. We have a motion on the table. Do we have any discussion on solid waste? Seeing and hearing no discussion, let's go to the vote. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Zaro Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuparoli.
Yes.
The Advisory and Finance Committee, by a vote of 13-0 has voted to recommend to town meeting to approve the solid waste operations budget as presented by the Select Board. Thank you, Mr. Coyle, for your help. Okay. We're on to the airport. The Plymouth Municipal Airport, home to more than 30 businesses that collectively employ more than 250 people, has been in operation since 1934. Many of these businesses operate from privately constructed buildings located on airport property, adding considerably to Plymouth's tax base. The type of businesses range from flight schools and maintenance facilities to law enforcement and medical air ambulance services. Airport Manager Matt Codillo met with the Advisory and Finance Committee, Subcommittee G, with Ms. Butler and I, and the Airport Enterprise Fund provides for the development, operation, and maintenance of the Plymouth Municipal Airport in a safe, efficient, and fiscally responsible manner that promotes general aviation. The airport helps stimulate the local economy and supports the community. Airport management is responsible to adhering to all federal, state, and local regulations. Revenue for the operation of the airport is primarily generated through the sale of aviation fuel to aircraft owners. That's approximately 80% of the total revenue. Also landing and tie-down fees and land leases. This budget shows a 24.9% increase in the cost of aviation fuel, but that is offset by the increased price charged to consumers of the fuel. So it's sort of a net sum game. So there's a slight increase to the budget. The Select Board recommends a $4,194,192 dollar budget, and Ms. Butler and I agree to approve that budget. So Mr. Cardillo explained that this is a level service budget. Longevity and vacation from the past is now in the budget, and also the new source system will be completely updated. So any questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Mr. Zuccarelli, would you care to make a motion to approve the airport enterprise fund budget?
I will.
Thank you. And Mr. Cabana, would you like to second that motion?
Yes, I will.
Thank you so much. We have a motion on the table to approve the airport enterprise budget. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Bizzarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Zara Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuccarelli?
Yes.
Thank you. By a vote of 13 for, 0 against, and 0 abstentions, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends to town meeting to approve the airport enterprise budget as presented. Brings us to the last of the budgets, and it's cable access. This fund acts primarily as a fiscal pass-through fund for receipts received from Verizon and Comcast. The monies are derived from fees received from their customers for cable usage. So you might notice that if you have cable, they have all these fees, and one of those is local cable access, and that goes toward this fund. These receipts are dispersed to PAC TV, which is filming us right now, and the Plymouth Public Schools for costs associated with governmental and educational programming produced by those organizations. The fund also receives approximately $10,000 annually in franchise fees that are retained by the town. Some $5,000 is budgeted for legal fees for negotiating contracts with Verizon and Comcast. This is a flat budget. The bulk of the funds received by the fund are transmitted to PAC TV and the Plymouth Public Schools to support public access television production. Revenues generated from Comcast and Verizon and continues to steadily decline due to the increasing popularity of streaming services versus cable TV. So every year we keep seeing this budget go down. There were no initiatives or opportunities identified, and Ms. Butler and I voted 2-0 to approve this budget of $1,545,000 as presented by the Select Board. Any questions? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Howard, could you please make a motion to approve the cable access budget?
So moved.
Thank you. Ms. Richards, would you please second?
Seconded.
We have a first and a second to approve the cable access budget, 7F. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, let's go to the vote. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Zara Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuccarelli?
Yes.
By a vote of 13, 0, and 0, the Advisory and Finance Committee recommends to town meeting to approve the cable access budget as presented by the Select Board. Okay, that is all the articles that we have, but we do have a couple of pieces of business, and let me get back to my... Okay, so we're in, yeah. We are in the new, I know, we are in the new other and old business, and Mr. Dunn, you do have your hand raised and you do have the floor.
I'd like to make a motion that we reconsider Article 16C next Wednesday, February 28th.
Okay, so that's an article that we saw back in January, Article 16C, Red Brook Affordable Housing. We do need to, so you're bringing up a motion, we need to.
I will second that.
We have a second, and now we need any discussion. Yes.
Just want to know what your reasons are for wanting to bring this forward.
So, thank you for the question. I would say one of the things that I asked them when they were here was to expand their commitment of affordable housing to the town from the 103 units. With this, they've added 10 additional units to that. They've also moved the project off of the majority of it off of Wareham Road onto the opposite side, which is one of the main concerns of the residents in the area.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Howard. You had your digital hand up. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Given the reasons cited by Mr. Dunn, the changes made in the proposal is received. I think it's important that Advisory and Finance consider this motion, this article, and hopefully ultimately send it on to town meeting for their consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Mr. Lawler. The floor is yours.
Yes, I also agree with Mr. Howard on that. I think it's a very important article that we have to, again, look at closely.
Yes, Mr. Green.
I think the memo that we got today or this morning kind of mischaracterizes that all of the needs of Advisory and Finance are met in the updated proposal. So I do think it's important that we vote on it again, and if not, just to give an updated opinion on the updated language and not have anything kind of go through that we didn't have our hands on. So I'm for reconsidering.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Mr. Zuparoli, I see your digital hand. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I agree that we should probably hear this article again. I still have some considerable reservations as far as the article is concerned. So I'm wondering if Mr. Gorsuch or any from 80 Makepeace or any other members of the Grantham group will be here that night to answer any of our questions.
He will be.
Okay, thanks. Then I have no problem discussing this and reconsidering it again. But as Mr. Green said, it is a little mischaracterized that all of the concerns and questions of the Advisory and Finance Committee have been met. That's just a mischaracterization.
Okay, so we have a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Richards, the floor is yours.
Have any of the residents in Red Brook been notified of this? And can they be?
I think the reason that I made the motion to hear it next week is so that we do have an opportunity of a week for them to know that we're hearing it again, so that if they do have concerns that they can come and have plenty of time to plan to be here or be on Zoom to make comments.
Okay. And whoever, I think they have like a blast notification process that through Red Brook that they can send an email out, and if maybe we can have them do that, that would be great. And I also support hearing it again. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Lally, the floor is yours.
Mr.
We are
Neiman, I don't
unable to
think
hear
my
Mr.
question
Lau.
was whether a week is enough notice, and I've been told yes. The other question, though, is who's the they that will notify the residents? Is it the developer? Is it how do we know that they'll get the notice?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be on our agenda posted.
Okay,
on
fair enough,
our
fair enough.
Website it will be for the 28th if we decide to vote to put it on the agenda.
Thank you.
I don't want to be presumptive here. Mr. Cabana, I see your digital hand. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. Has this new update been reviewed by the Select Board? And if so, what is their opinion on it? Thank you.
I believe the Select Board had approved it from the beginning, so there would be no reconsideration at that point. It is our committee that unanimously rejected it.
So, is the Select Board aware of this?
I believe they are.
My understanding is that
Mr.
they
Dunn.
heard it last night, but did not re-vote. But the presentation was made to the Select Board last night.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Zuparoli, I see your digital hand. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, the Select Board did hear this last night. Mr. Gorsuch was there to talk about the reconsiderations and the change in the language. There were also some members of, I believe there were two residents of Red Brook that spoke regarding the article as well.
Okay, any more questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve reconsideration of Article 16C, and we will vote. Ms. Butler, do you vote for reconsideration or not?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Bizzarro?
Abstain.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Zara Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuparoli?
For reconsideration, yes.
Okay, thank you. So we have 12 votes for reconsideration, 0 against, and 1 abstention. So the Advisory and Finance Committee has voted to reconsider Article 16C at our next meeting, which will be February 28th. Okay, just a quick announcement of the Charter Review Committee has invited our committee members to its next charter review meeting on March 5th to discuss any changes that we might want to see in the Advisory and Finance Committee. So anybody that wants to be a part of that, you can find that on their agenda with the further details. That's March 5. Okay, one more piece of new and old business. The Advisory and Finance Committee has acknowledged the receipt of an open meeting law complaint that was recently received and will delegate the response to Town Council and or the chair of this committee. So I just have one comment on that, and if you're going to make an official complaint about a person, you should at least spell their name right. Okay. Anyway, any other comments? Mr. Zuparoli, I see your digital hand.
Yeah, thank you. I read this complaint once I received it this afternoon, and I have several issues and several concerns with the nature of the complaint. First of all, it was not on the 16th of January. This was not our meeting. This was a select board meeting that we were invited to. Second of all, and probably most importantly, directions were given out in advance of this meeting that anyone who was participating virtually via Zoom in the hybrid format simply needed to alert the assistant to the select board that they would be participating virtually and that they would be made panelists. I can stand evidence of that because that's exactly what I did, and I had no problem participating in this meeting that night. I think this is a frivolous complaint. I think that we should give it no more energy than what it already has. Simply acknowledging it is enough, and I think that we should just let it go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zuccarelli, for your comment. Any other? Yes, Mr. Green, the floor is yours.
So this is a different matter. This is, I guess, old business technically. So we voted to approve the MBTA Communities Act presentation. I just want to make everybody aware that the town of Milton approved, and then the voters rejected it, and they just lost their first grant from the Attorney General. So when we go to the precinct caucuses, I think it's very important to educate the people we talk to about the consequences of randomly voting no for this. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Green. There was a large article in the Globe last Sunday about that very issue, talking about the minutia of that decision, and that they feel like the residents were not that far off of approving it if there were some changes made. But you're right, they did talk about the consequences of, this is something the town has to approve, or there are consequences, which is losing funding. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other, Ms. Richards?
Just speaking of caucuses, when do you anticipate giving out assignments?
So I have placed a request to the head of the precinct chairs, and she is accumulating. I already have about half of them committed, but she will be getting me the rest of them. So I would suspect maybe another week or two at the most.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Dunn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that we have to vote on to delegate the response on that open meeting complaint. So
okay,
I will defer to you, I think, whether you would like it to be you or town council, but. Kevin said yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So it's been
okay.
deferred. Okay, so
Okay.
it's been put on next week's agenda. No, that's okay. Thank you for that. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, there is a member of the public who happens to be my predecessor, sitting very quietly. Would you like to make a comment? I think you're the, and there's another person, a couple of people on the Zoom call, but I don't know who they are. Yes. This is Kevin Canty for our newcomers. He was our chair for many years. Did a fantastic job.
Thank you, Mr. Neerman. You're doing a fantastic job yourself. Don't sell yourself short. Well, it was a nice meeting this evening. I've been through 9 years of these types of meetings, some of which we would just be about at the halfway point at this time. So you guys can congratulate yourself on an effective use of your time. Those were some long evenings on Wednesdays and some difficult Thursday mornings after some of those. So congratulations. I appreciated the actions that you took on the budget, and it's good to see all of you again. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, I believe we have concluded all the business that we possibly could drum up in one night. Don't search. Your hands are all down. That's a good thing. Okay, can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Lally. A second. Thank you, Ms. Butler. All right. Any discussion about adjourning? Okay, let's go to the vote. Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Cabana?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Bizzarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Zarro-Abraham?
Yes.
And Mr. Zuccarelli?
Yes.
And it's unanimous, 13-4, 0 against, 0 abstain. We have concluded our meeting. Thank you so much. 9:29.